Welcome back to our final panel, our final public panel of the morning. I know that the last panel we had was really invigorating and the conversation has been very stimulating, and we've been talking about how cities are competing with each other, but we're going to continue our approach, which is somewhat cooperative and helpful in sharing, because that's really what Global Partners has made itself through its website and its resource exchange and through the Global Partners Summits. It's really about sharing innovative ideas across cities, and we actually believe that that process of sharing will make us all stronger. Now, in keeping with the theme of our summit this morning, I know everybody understands that it's simply impossible to create jobs without working with the private sector. So, because we are focusing from the perspective of public policy, we do recognize the important role of the private sector here, and we have no illusions about that. But we also want to say that at the same time, business also needs the support of government. We don't want government to get in the way, but business does need the support of government to grow and expand and to innovate. And so in this session this morning, we are really fortunate to be able to hear from today's leaders in creating public-private partnerships to enable business growth and job creation. Our first speaker is Chris Vermeulen. Chris was appointed as the general manager of Bandwidth Barn Ltd. in 2008. This is a Cape Town-based organization enabling entrepreneurs to start successful businesses and develop new products. And he will, of course, talk more about Bandwidth Barn. Prior to joining Bandwidth Barn, Chris gained extensive business experience across a number of sectors and has served in a variety of executive management positions. And his field of specialization is entrepreneurship and development. He has also been instrumental in organizing Cape Town Entrepreneurship Competition, excuse me, an initiative of the City of Cape Town for the past 3 years. It's a pleasure to welcome him to the Global Partners Summit and to New York City. Chris.
Esther, thank you so much. And once again, thanks for the opportunity, and I'm very honored to be in the esteemed company that we've had this morning, and I'm sure that's still sitting in front of us here. When preparing for this, I had a lot of thinking to do, and I thought of, as an opening to tell you what I'm not going to tell you in this story. And I'm not going to tell you about the economic and the political and the social challenges that we currently face in South Africa. I'm not going to tell you about growing unemployment figures. I'm not going to tell you about the growing or the huge number of growing youth that are unskilled and untrained. I'm not going to tell you about the red tape that makes it very difficult and very expensive still to do business in South Africa, and neither will I tell you anything about the labor market that is so overregulated at this stage that it actually discourages small businesses from employing people and thus creating jobs. I thought it would be a good opportunity to rather tell you about our very small organization, and with very limited resources, that the work we've been doing over the past 10 years in partnership with the City of Cape Town and also with the Department of Economic Development of our local provincial government. Now, I mean, if it comes back to the challenges in South Africa, I think those are well documented and well researched, and a lot of studies done by organizations like the World Bank, Infodev, the Global Entrepreneurship Institute, and the like. When we look at the literature on business incubation, and we've heard this morning about New York's 9 incubators, then the process for establishing that is well documented and established and well described. And this usually involves some government agency or an NGO or an academic institution to take the lead and drive initiatives like that. In our case, the story has been completely different, and most people find it surprising that we have developed from within the ranks of the entrepreneurial community themselves, who 10 years ago, a couple of software engineers getting together, and the sole purpose at that stage was to overcome the high cost of doing business, and specifically the high cost at that stage of internet access, and therefore also the name bandwidth bond. The focus of the organization, because of that background, has mainly been around providing entrepreneurs and startup companies with infrastructure support. And although the scenario in terms of doing business and access to internet and internet cost and bandwidth cost has come down and changed quite significantly over the past couple of years, infrastructure support still remains a very large part and a very important component of the support that we provide to entrepreneurs. In fact, I think the benefit of the services that we deliver to our community is that we provide our mostly previously disadvantaged group of entrepreneurs access to facilities and skills and knowledge that they may not have otherwise have access to or can afford for that matter. It was not until 5 years after our establishment in the year 2000 that we have for the first time started looking at delivering enterprise development services in terms of business skills. And again, that need sprung from right within our entrepreneurial community, when we've identified that if you look at technicians and you look at groups of software engineers and software developers and graphic designers, that these people are really specialists and experts in what they do, but they know very little about business. And in order to take it to the next level, we've identified the need to help them overcome that barrier and to focus rather on business and to enter the global arena as innovative and sustainable businesses as well. So we have launched in 2000, we have launched our first program called Launchpad, which was aimed at imparting very basic business skills to a small startup group of about 5 young companies. This was self-funded. In 2006, we had launched our second program called My Mentor, when we've identified the need of very specific, specialized skills within businesses that needed the assistance of subject specialists to unlock and move those businesses forward. What we've also realized during this time, though, is that because of this particular skill set that is required to assist these companies and our limited resources, that we will not be able to develop that skill set in-house and will have to rely on external resources for mentorship and for coaching these companies. It was then that we approached both the provincial government and the City of Cape Town to see whether they would be interested to help us fund those particular programs. Now, I think at this point it may be appropriate just to say a little something on our funding model and our business model, and that is that we do not receive any operational support or funding support from any organization or from any government organization. What we generate, and we pay our bills by charging clients normal rental rates on the services that we provide. But the enterprise development side of the business and those programs that we run are funded to the amount of around about $300,000 per annum by the City of Cape Town and the provincial government. We've recently commissioned an independent impact assessment to see what the impact on general economic development and entrepreneurship development has been. And we are very satisfied and very proud to say that of the companies that has moved through some of our programs, like the Launchpad Velocity program, 85% are still in business today. The 98% of companies that we've supported in terms of the mentoring and coaching program are still in business today. We have seen that since during the past 5 years, these companies had a combined revenue growth of over 328%, and today supports in excess of 1,700 direct and indirect jobs, which is a record that we're quite proud of. But the one thing that we have realized and that we've seen coming out of the impact assessment is that to move to the next level, that we will have to shift the focus away from being overly infrastructure support focused to really to go to the innovative side and to really develop innovation and to focus on innovation coming out of our universities. The difficulty in that is that we don't have the resources to do that by ourselves. And once again, we have to return to our public partners to see how we could address these issues. Now, during the celebrations of Cape Town Entrepreneurship Week in 2010, Professor Daniel Eisenberg of Babson said that in order for cities to really show sustainable growth, that it has to create at least one high growth potential business per 100,000 inhabitants every year. Professor Eisenberg then also looks at defining these high growth potential businesses and saying that these are businesses with high growth ambition. These are companies with products and services that has a potential high market acceptance. They have large potential markets. They have good leadership, and they have a global orientation. So how then do we as a small organization create to contribute these around about 30 businesses per annum that Cape Town with its 3 million population need to create? And the answer to that is very simple, is that we need to rid ourselves of our dependency on our rental model. So we need to be freed up from that, and therefore we need resources, and the easiest resource to do that is to have our own facility. At this stage, we rent our premises from a commercial landlord, and if we could rid ourselves of that model, we could contribute much more to the development of entrepreneurship and small businesses within Cape Town and within the region. So the issues that we're currently looking at is how do we then, with our public partners who do have huge property portfolios available, some of which is underutilized completely at this stage, and how do we unlock the political will and the political goodwill to help us then proceed further in creating a great city and a great region.
Thank you, Chris. Our next speaker is Ulla Hamilton, who is Vice Mayor for Enterprise, Traffic, and Labor Market for the City of Stockholm and has an extensive background in politics, policy, and the private sector, which of course is a requisite for this panel. I think you need to be engaged at all 3 levels. She's been a member of the Stockholm City Council since 1995 and a member of the Council of Mayors since 2006, and is a former Vice Mayor for the Environment and Traffic and for Environment and Real Estate. Ulla Hamilton is also a former member of local government councils of Uppsala and Lund, and before becoming Vice Mayor, she was Communications Manager at the Confederation of Swedish Enterprises. I am not going to try and pronounce that in Swedish, since I can't even do French, and I studied that. She has a BA in law from Uppsala University And most of us in this room know that Stockholm has been a leader in the innovation economy and in creating public-private partnerships. So we're delighted to have you here today, and we look forward to your remarks.
Thank you very much, and thank you to the organizers and to the City of New York and the sponsors for inviting Stockholm to this very interesting seminar. And as you know, Stockholm and Sweden is located on a continent that is becoming less important to world economic development. It's therefore of very great importance that our offer from the city, from the Stockholm region, to investors and visitors will be as attractive as possible in order to meet the global competition, as we've heard of here today. Stockholm is, as many capitals, a growing city, and we are growing quite rapidly at the moment. And the challenge is how to grow and develop in a sustainable and resilient fashion, because we are also very famous for being a very environmentally friendly city. The city has an overriding vision 2030 based on the notion that Stockholm will continue to grow, and the vision outlines what kind of city we would like to live in 20 years from now. But visions need to be transformed into goals and targets. An example of goals turned into action is our city planning project, the Stockholm Royal Seaport area. The area consists of 236 hectares of mainly old industrial land and ports that over the next 20 years is going to develop into 30,000 offices and 10,000 homes. And this project has a strong environmental profiling. The City Council have adopted a comprehensive program covering goals regarding ecological sustainability, social sustainability, and reduction of carbon emissions. The program is developed in close cooperation with the stakeholders, and all agree that the Stockholm Royal Seaport should be a world-class area regarding sustainability. And I would like to give you a few examples of these goals. One is that by 2020, it has the exhaust of 1.5 ton of CO2 emissions per person and per year. Today, Stockholm overall have 3.5, so this is a very tough goal. By 2030, the area is to be fossil fuel free, and within the area there will be plus houses that create more energy than they use and pump it back, the energy back into the main electric grid. You heard about smart grids this morning. And the development of the area will go on for many years and is also divided into smaller projects. And for each project, the overriding goals will be transformed into specific targets that the builders have to meet. And in this works, the city have a close cooperation with the building industry, the companies, and the research areas. The program also states that the companies involved should have the opportunity to use the area as a showcase for their technology and excellent solutions. As a result, of course, the interest to be part of the development of this area is very strong from business, not only from Swedish companies, from international companies also. And there is a lot of interesting collaboration projects going on. One example of that is that the company ABB is together with the local energy company Fortum and the Royal Institute of Technology and Ericsson involved in a project about smart grid solutions in this area. And we also have connected to the development Stockholm Royal Seaport Innovation, and the mission for them are, for example, to create a venue for making contacts, plan, implement, evaluate, and conduct research on sustainable solutions being tested in the Royal Seaport area, and to promote the development and application of environmental technologies and system solutions for sustainable urban development, to show and communicate knowledge on environmental technologies and sustainable solutions that help to influence community planning, businesses and users' behaviors towards sustainability. So this is one example how we actually work very, very close together with businesses in Stockholm. And we think that the close cooperation between the city and business is of great importance. And the main task for the city-owned company, Stockholm Business Region Development, SBRD, is to help increase sustainable growth. SBRD focuses mainly on 3 areas: investment promotion, development of Stockholm as a business location, and service to industry. Through efforts in these 3 areas, the company will actually contribute to improving the conditions for running, launch and establish businesses in Stockholm and in the Stockholm region as well. Since the conditions in the business world are changing at an accelerating rate, we know all that, SBRD need constantly updated data to identify bottlenecks and need for the industry. And the role as a facilitator for business, academy and the public sector needs to be strengthened, primarily in innovation and entrepreneurship, and we are working in that direction right now. Stockholm has more than 20 business parks with large differences, but all of which serve a major hub for different types of activities required in the vicinity of the city. In 2012 starts a project to actually define the characteristics of a world-class business park, and the aim is to try to describe what it takes to fulfill the task for generating jobs, be attractive to international investment, while providing necessary service to business and citizens in Stockholm. The work is done, of course, in collaboration with the companies that are located in the business area and the city administration. And we are also working very hard in order to improve the service to Stockholm's businesses via e-services. That's, of course, of great importance in order to reduce bureaucracy, improve accessibility, provide prompt handling of cases, and provide good and comprehensive information to companies. And the service brings together advice, administration, and contacts to entrepreneurs from the city and its various activities in one place. And the development is now in full swing, and the launch will take place next year. SBRD also provides companies that want to grow and establish themselves in Stockholm qualified and free servicing to find premises, permission, network, manpower, and other key establishment conditions such as links to relevant authorities. We also provide knowledge about where innovators can turn for advice and support to realize their business ideas. And Stockholm Business Region Development is continually working to build networks with companies in Stockholm to quickly assist them if problems arise, or simply to connect companies that we actually know exist, but they perhaps doesn't know that the other one exists. One example is the administration of something that we call the Climate Pact, that I myself started in 2007. That's a cooperation between the city and the business sector with a view to fulfill the objectives of the Stockholm Environmental Programme. The pact consists today of more than 150 companies and is growing continuously. And the pact is an arena where you can increase the exchange between companies in environmental technology and thus help to strengthen their capacity for a new market. And this is also an opportunity for companies from different branches actually to meet cross-border. So this has become a quite important area. And to create interaction between the city and the business community, we arranged an annual Stockholm meeting, bringing together politicians, business, and representatives from culture and the University of Stockholm. And the aim is to foster great cooperation and focus on common challenges. And the topic for the meeting 2011 was an innovation strategy for Stockholm. And the city do this together with, they arranged the meeting together with the Chamber of Commerce and Ericsson, the company. City of Stockholm is also a partner in the Electrum Foundation. Electrum is pursuing strategies to ensure continued growth in Kista Science City, one of the world's leading ICT clusters, and a good cooperation between research, academy, city and business communities, as well as helping both domestic and foreign companies to establish themselves in the area. And growth will primarily take place within research-based and innovative growth companies based on the application of ICT. We also have an advisory board attached to the Stockholm Business Region Development, and members consist of key representatives of the Stockholm business community. So these are only some examples of what we actually do in order to have a very close cooperation between the City of Stockholm and the businesses. And I do personally myself also make a company visit every week in order to see what's happening around the business arena in Stockholm. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Finally, our last speaker is Kathryn Wylde. You can read her formal biography in the program. She is president and CEO of the nonprofit Partnership for New York City, which is our leading business organization. Kathy joined the partnership in 1982, serving as the president and CEO of the New York City Investment Fund and the Housing Partnership Development Corporation. And under her leadership, the partnership has played a major role in the city's emergence as a premier global center of commerce, culture, and innovation. Kathy, who really is an internationally known expert in housing, economic development, and urban policy, I can personally attest to that, is also the deputy chair of the board of the Federal Reserve Bank of New York and serves on numerous boards and commissions, including New York City's Economic Development Corporation. Prior to joining the partnership, Kathy worked at Anchor Savings Bank and Lutheran Medical Center and was the lead redevelopment person in the federally designated poverty area of Sunset Park, Brooklyn. She hails from Madison, Wisconsin, although I think you really are a New Yorker by now, and did her undergraduate degree at Olaf College. Kathy has been the single most important person in the city of New York, ensuring cooperation between business and government, which is not an easy task. And I will let you in on a secret. Kathy may be a tough-minded business leader, but she understands the importance of New York's diverse communities and the need to support civil society. She doesn't believe it's about business against everybody else or everybody against business. It's about this kind of cooperation that the partnership embodies. And for those of you who might try and entice Kathy to your city, we're not letting her leave New York. It's really a personal pleasure for me to introduce Kathy Wylde. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Esther. More than generous. And thank you, Marjorie Tiven from Global Partners, for bringing everybody together today. I haven't been to a lot of cities in the world, but I have been to both Cape Town and Stockholm, and they are wonderful cities. I had the privilege in 1991 of going with a team that Mayor David Dinkins took to Cape Town and Johannesburg to help Nelson Mandela convince the business community that he was not anti-business. And the mayor took a team, and it was just an amazing week that we spent in South Africa at a very important moment in its history. And Cape Town's one of the most beautiful places I've ever been. So, And Stockholm, I went with IBM when we were trying to introduce congestion pricing in New York, and Stockholm was a real leader there, and our New York-based company, international but New York-based, I should note with a new woman CEO, IBM took a team of us to Stockholm to understand how they were solving these problems. In Stockholm, we do a report with PricewaterhouseCoopers every year ranking great world cities that have capital markets, but many other things. And Stockholm always ranks high, and this year went up faster than any other city in terms of its performance because of its great livability. And I know that Ulla, in her position, is contributing a lot to that. So congratulations to you as well. I was going to talk briefly about three things. One, our organization that's organized as a partnership. It is a private sector organization. It is business leaders. It is it's 200 CEOs of international business organizations, some national, mostly international, and their membership, their employees. But that is they're our shareholders in our nonprofit organization, and we partner with state and local government, sometimes national, but that's a little far away. We're very parochial here. But we partner with the leaders of state and local government, with the leaders of organized labor, with many civic and other organizations to try and come up with the best public policies to build our economy and to try and actually invest in real projects to build our economy. We created a privately funded investment fund that we can use as seed money to invest in for-profit or non-profit activities. Unlike many so-called social investment funds, we've been in business for more than 15 years, and we have paid all our costs and have an internal rate of return of more than 3%. And given that we invest in higher risk, lower return projects than anybody else will do, that's pretty good. So that's sort of our partnership role. It was importantly started by David Rockefeller, who was a citizen of the world, but also very much a citizen of New York and New York City. He, in 1980, understood that globalization of the economy meant that cities had a unique role. They were the place that had the density, the diversity, the major institutions, the transportation networks, that cities, in fact, looking forward to the 21st century and the global economy, we're going to have a real great role. And they were very important to international business as the platform for its growth. He also understood that New York City in 1980 was a mess. It was coming out of near bankruptcy. It was hugely high crime rates. Its neighborhoods had burned down. It had lost more than 1 million people. The middle class, the workforce had basically fled because we lost several 100,000 manufacturing jobs in a very short period of time. We went from having 78 world headquarters companies or Fortune 500 companies to 40 in a period of less than a decade. We were hemorrhaging jobs and people, talent. We were a real mess. And so he understood that the future of both New York City and international business was absolutely locked. They needed the city as a great platform, and it was a lousy platform in 1980, and so business had to do something about it. He called it enlightened self-interest, which is a term I'm sure you're familiar with. But that's what the partnership is about. I sometimes call it the anti-chamber of commerce. We are business acting in the interests of the city and hopefully the state. Over this period of time, we have worked on reform of public education, on rebuilding burnt-out neighborhoods so that the middle class could come back and we'd have the strength of our communities to support a good workforce. We have worked on a number of projects, including trying unsuccessfully with the city to bring congestion pricing in, but to make sure that we had the resources to fight crime, to support our public transportation system. We are a group that sometimes supports raising taxes in order to do that, as we did a couple of years ago with raising a mobility tax to pay for our MTA. So we work on a number of those policy initiatives, and when it's important to figure out what to do next, to take some early risks, we use our investment fund to do that. You need only think about the consequences for, I don't know if you read about, we read about it a lot here. We had a $500 million investment that our federal government made last year in a factory to build solar panels in California that went bust and took the $500 million in stimulus with it. I just mentioned it as an illustration of government has a hard time taking early stage risks and picking winners, because if they lose, it's big trouble for whoever made those decisions. On the other hand, the private sector has a risk-reward capacity that's different, that doesn't necessarily depend on everything working. And so we've tried to position the private sector as providing some resources to take some of those risks that government couldn't. An example is in investing early in the biotech industry in terms of getting some of that activity going, and now that is a major new sector that's developing in our city. Since I'm going to be cut off and we're going to go to questions, I'm just going to mention one other thing I wanted to talk about. We've also worked with the city government as it has restructured itself. Our city, under Mayor Bloomberg, figured out that it is the private sector, not government, that really has to be the job creator. The city has to provide the environment, they have to provide the essential services, and they have to provide some responsiveness to the needs of government. And we've seen our city government restructure its commitment to business and business development in two important ways that I just want to point out. One, Robert Walsh, the commissioner of our Department of Small Business Services, is sitting here in the front row, and I just want to say that Mayor Bloomberg created our first small businesses services department on its own, because they very different demands and needs from small business and large business, and very smartly put our workforce training development workforce training operation within that department, because frankly big businesses have human resources departments and training programs and all that. Small businesses do not and need that kind of support, and so we've got that important structure. And then on the other side, our City Economic Development Corporation is not technically a government agency, because it wouldn't have the freedom it needed for procurement and for bringing in resources, for taking risks, for helping, for partnering with the private sector as a government agency which is hamstrung by so many rules and regulations. And it is set up as a not-for-profit local development corporation. And I think that that model is one that has really made, I've worked with city government over the last 40 years, and the last decade during which these innovations were made in our economic development area is really the first time it's been successful in partnering with the governments, with the private sector, with business. So I would just suggest to you that it's a very good model to take a look at. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kathy. I'd like to invite members of the audience up to the microphones for questions. If you can just line up, students in my class know, you'll get extra points if you ask a good question. If you don't, I don't know what I'm going to do. But while we're waiting for people to line up, because I know you will, I'll present one question to our panelists here. You've all touched on very important aspects of the public-private partnership, and looking both at what government can do for cities and what businesses can do for cities, and what city governments need to do for business. But at the end of the day, we all know business is about profit. So in keeping that in mind, what is the most, and Kathy sort of touched on this with the enlightened self-interest, but I'd like everybody to expand on this. What is really the most compelling reason for businesses to work with government? And why don't I start with you, Ulla?
I think that there is a lot of reasons, and if you're looking historically upon Stockholm and our development, so you can actually see that one important reason why we became the first European Green Capital in 2010, appointed by the European Commission, was the smart solutions developed by the companies and provided to the city, and they've been able to market that good ideas and to sell their knowledge all over the world, thanks to the development in Stockholm. And that's what we are doing right now in the Stockholm-Wylde area as well, because I think it's important, if you would like to keep the position as one of the leading cities in the world, business do understand that they can help. And that's also business for them if they can help us to make smart solutions. And that's what we actually are doing when we're working together with the business in the Stockholm-Wylde Seaport area. And this is really a win-win situation.
Thank you. Chris?
I think for us as a small organization, it's critical in working with government. I think as a social enterprise, we share the same objectives with government, and that is, in our particular environment, is to create a better life for all. I think there's a lot of initiatives. I can think of, for example, the Cape Town Active Entrepreneurship Initiative, which has been looking at the Barcelona Activa model and how do we implement that in Cape Town, and how do we adapt it as Activa has done with so many countries all over the world. And I think the progressive thinking of the city in this case is that they do not have the resources to do this by themselves. So they act as the catalyst to make this happen, and they then leave it over to private business and private sector to drive and really implement those initiatives, because we are closer to the ground, and some of the resources might be more easily available to private sector to do. But for me personally, and for our organization, it comes to very much to sharing the same objectives in the end of the day.
Kathy?
Well, as I alluded, when the city doesn't work, business can't function. So it's a total identity of interest in terms of business having a vested interest in the city working. It's totally in business interest when they put in a call because something is broken down, that somebody smart and good and highly motivated working for the city is on the other end of the phone. So they have lots of reasons to want a city that works. A generation ago, businesses fled the city and went out to suburban office parks or to other places in the world and thought they could ignore their partnership with government. But fortunately, the forces of the 21st century are bringing people and business back to the city. They have to have the diversity of talent, the resources of the wonderful research and academic institutions that are mostly in cities. And so, and the infrastructure, transportation, international airports, et cetera. So they're coming back to the city, and their stake in the city is only growing larger.
Thank you. While we were chatting up here, I noticed that we have some questions. So what I'd like to do is ask our questioners one at a time to present their questions, and then the panelists can divvy them up and we can hear from everybody. So why don't we start, and please identify yourself.
Sure. My name is Simon Bell. I work in the Middle East, North Africa region of the World Bank. The title of this panel session is Business Growth and Job Creation. And the research we've done at the bank seems to suggest that something between 15 to 20% of firms generate lots of jobs rapidly. The rest actually have a certain amount of jobs, and they stay at that level for long periods of time. So my question really is there any efforts made, and I think, you know, we're in a situation where global unemployment is an increasingly serious problem for ourselves here in Europe and all around the world, and we're now seemingly staring in the face of potentially a second global financial crisis which could make things worse. So I guess my question to you is anything done to actually focus on the types of industries that would fall into perhaps that 15 to 20%, which are rapid employment generators, or is it just a policy of supporting all businesses in the hope that overall employment will increase? Thanks.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Nina Robbins. I work at Columbia University. And my question is about public-private partnerships that have not worked, looking at infrastructure projects that have gone under and kind of put a damper on the concept when it was very popular. And what kind of structure do you need in a private-public partnership, and what kind of conditions make for a success that can be shared?
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Zeb Landsman. I've noticed in our political world there's a big fight between some that say regulation is good and some that say regulation is bad, and some say free market yes and free market no. And I've always thought that's a stupid distinction because private industry can't function without government. Someone needs to enforce the contracts, someone needs to protect the patents, someone needs to build the roads. And I would love some way to change the conversation from yes, free market and yes, regulation to discussing the individual regulation and which ones work rather than just kind of choosing up teams. And I'm wondering how to do that.
Thank you. Yes.
Hi, I wanted to pick up on a point that Kathy mentioned regarding a 3% return on your investments. If you can share with us how you do that, because you know, we're struggling to monetize social problems. You know, we want to fund a cure for cancer, or we want to fund transportation, but we can't seem to get the dollars to do so. So I would love to see how your organization funds these problems. Thanks.
My name is Smita Srinivas. I'm a faculty member here in urban planning, and I direct the Technological Change Lab at Columbia University. My question to the panelists is related to the issue that Mr. Imalt raised this morning, which is that a big form of economic dynamism will come from companies that are directly innovating in areas that are of public concern. So sort of a social goods focus for technological innovation. And my question to you, the three panelists, is what are two things perhaps in your cities that you have done to prioritize those social goals as a signal for technological innovation? Thank you.
Thank you. What I'd like to do, since you've all heard all 5 of these questions, is make sure we try and cover in some way all of them, but there are only 3 of you. So some of them were directed to individuals, but I'm not going to divvy up these questions, but I'm going to ask each of you to address aspects of the questions that you think were most pertinent to your work. And if something gets left out, we'll try and circle back and get a response. So I'm going to ask at this point Chris to begin.
Yes, I think in terms of the question of the gentleman over there with job creation, I think the latest statistics that we have is that 50% of all new jobs are created by small business. So that is a very important sector for government to develop and to focus. And there seems to be this very, very heavy expectation at this stage that entrepreneurship is the golden key and the golden solution in our particular environment to solve most of the social issues. And I'm afraid that in many senses that it is not, that entrepreneurship in itself does not address some of the underlying problems that we have that's going to create a better society. So that's something that that one has to be very careful about in looking at entrepreneurship and small business as being the sole provider of new opportunity and new jobs.
Thank you. Ulla?
Yeah, it's a great challenge to sort of attract small businesses to employ people, because that's, of course, risk-taking all the time. But I think it's important that the city show good examples where you actually can show that we have small companies that has developed quite rapidly, and that they are good example for other companies as well. And we also have a startup advice system where we actually also advise companies how to grow in a sustainable way. And we have that kind of advice. Are we working together with the finance sector and other consultant companies? So that's a free of charge advisory for a lot of SME companies. And we also have a system in Stockholm called the Stockholm Innovation and Growth Company, where we actually have a business angel system connected to a fund where we approve companies that have a business idea that's good enough for exporting. We don't take companies that don't have export ideas, but companies that actually have good ideas that it's possible to export. They can have these funds, and they can also be part of this business network, business angel networks, and have all the kind of advices that all these experienced people have. So this is also one way of supporting possibility to grow in when we talk about SME companies.
Kathy?
Well, I think our organic growth in jobs in New York City over the last 10 years has been business and professional services, and the healthcare industry is the biggest generator of jobs. That's obviously not the source of next generation new job. Well, I won't say that about healthcare, but private sector. In private sector job creation, and both of those depend on other sources of revenues and markets from other industries. So we've been clearly, everybody knows that industry cluster development, creating the infrastructure and providing the kind of public and private support is the key to that. I think cities have the unique advantage in that we also have the markets to do the early beta testing, the adoption. And what we've tried to do in New York City is structure programs that greatly accelerate and advantage entrepreneurial efforts growing here by virtue of their support, partnership, early access to markets from our major legacy companies. In the media sector, of course, first with the digital media sector, where we have built a world-class culture with tens of thousands of jobs in it at this point, but also increasingly in other sectors of our economy.
Thank you. The one question that clearly didn't get responded to really came up in two of the last questions, which is about social innovation and prioritizing social goals. And I think that I'm going to take the moderator's prerogative and make a point here. I'm fascinated by that question because it is an interesting time that we live in when we're looking to the private sector to do what traditionally has been government's function. So I would like to rephrase that, and maybe, this is a failure of the whole civic conversation, but business schools have taken up this issue of social entrepreneurship, and I think they've been very innovative there. Our public policy school has been working with the private sector to encourage students to work in the area of social entrepreneurship as well. In reality, I believe that we're not going to solve social problems without both government doing what it needs to do, which is educate this next generation so that they can take up the jobs and don't require the services, and then provide the services for those who are, as some used to say, the truly needy. There's a charitable sector, and they have responsibilities, but the real responsibility in that field is government. And our focus today has been really how government can help business in the job creation and business development area. And I just want to thank our panelists for focusing on the point of the conference and really providing for us, tremendous examples. If you're listening and you're from other cities, I think some trade secrets have been revealed here today, and I hope you take them home with you. And this has been a great way to end our morning session. Thank you so much.